All right, so Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami.
Yeah, pretty big shakeup, right?
It is.
Yeah,
It is, and I think maybe people who aren't super into the NBA might not realize just how big a deal this is.
definitely. He's a top tier player,
Yeah.
all-star caliber.
Yeah, I mean, for those who might not be, following every stat line, what makes Jimmy Butler so special? I mean,
Well, I think first and foremost, you got to talk about his competitiveness.
Hmm.
The guy just has this relentless drive to
Yeah.
win, and he pushes his teammates hard.
Oh yeah, he's known for that for sure. And that leads into my next point. I mean, imagine you're Jimmy Butler. You're giving it your all every single night, but the team isn't quite keeping up.
Right, and that seems to be a big part of the issue here. The Heat have been inconsistent this season.
For sure.
Their offense has sputtered at times, and even their defense, which has always been their strong suit, hasn't been as dominant.
It's kind of like he's trying to run a relay race, but his teammates are stuck jogging, you know?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. You can see that frustration reflected in his stats, too. Well, his usage rate is through the roof, meaning he's carrying a massive offensive load.
Yeah.
But his efficiency has taken a hit, suggesting he's having to force things a bit because he's not getting enough help.
So the big question everyone's asking is, where does he go next? The Clippers are the obvious choice, right? Pair him with Kawhi and Paul George and...
Yeah, they're the popular pick, for sure. On
Yeah.
paper, it's a terrifying trio, but
Yeah.
chemistry matters. Talent alone doesn't guarantee a championship.
Right, right. Remember when the Clippers had Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan,
Exactly.
all that talent, and they never even made it to the finals.
Yeah.
So, okay, if not the Clippers, what about a team like the Knicks? Imagine Butler and Madison Square Garden bringing that intensity to New York.
Now, that would be a huge splash for the Knicks. They've been craving a superstar for years, someone who can lead them back to relevance.
And the Knicks always need help on defense.
Oh, absolutely. Butler's defensive mentality would fit perfectly with Coach Thibodeau's system.
Okay, so before we get too carried away with hypotheticals, let's take a step back. This trade request speaks to a larger trend in the NBA, don't you think? This idea of player empowerment.
Oh, absolutely. Players have more agency than ever before. They're not just chess pieces anymore. They're using their leverage to shape their careers and chase those championships.
It really feels like we're seeing a power shift in the league. Like players like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and now Jimmy Butler, they're not just stars, they're architects.
I like that architects, designing their own legacies, choosing their own destinies.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that creates this constant state of flux. Teams can rise and fall so quickly based on the whims of a few elite players.
No doubt. It's a high-stakes game, and the stakes just got even higher with this Butler trade request.
And, speaking of high stakes, let's shift our focus to the Miami Heat. This is a massive blow for them, but it also presents an opportunity.
How so?
Well, now they're in a position to potentially rebuild around Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. So what do you think? Are they better off starting fresh or trying to stay competitive in the short term?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Did they try to trade Butler for a haul of young assets and draft picks?
Right.
Or did they try to package him with some of their veterans to get another star in return? It'll be fascinating to see what Pat Riley decides to do. He's never been one to shy away from a bold move.
All right, so we've talked about why Butler wants out. We've touched on some potential landing spots. Now let's shift gears a bit and dig into the implications of this trade request. We've got a few more teams to consider, plus we need to unpack what this all means for the Miami Heat and the NBA as a whole. But first we want to hear from you. What are your initial thoughts? Where do you think Jimmy Butler will end up? And what does this move say about the state of the league? Hit us up on social media and let's keep this conversation going.
It's a really interesting point you brought up, about rebuilding versus staying competitive.
Yeah.
It really kind of highlights, I think, the different approaches, teams are taking these days in this new era of player empowerment.
For sure. I mean, it's like you said, you want to build a winning culture, right?
Yeah.
But you also have to be, flexible and responsive to the desires of your star players.
Exactly. And sometimes those two goals, they clash. For the Heat, letting go of Butler could be a signal that they're shifting to a longer-term vision.
Yeah.
Prioritizing youth and development over immediate contention.
And honestly, that might be the smartest move, right? I mean, they've got some really promising young guys in Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero.
Absolutely.
This could be their chance to really build something special around those two.
Yeah. Adebayo's already an all-star caliber player, and Harrow's shown those flashes of brilliance.
Yes, yes.
But the question is, can they, develop into those franchise cornerstones, guys that can lead Miami back to title contention?
And that's what makes it so interesting for Heat fans, right? Are they willing to be patient?
Yeah.
Are they willing to trust the process? Or are they expecting Pat Riley to, to make some kind of big splash and keep them in win-now mode?
Right.
It's a tough call for sure.
It is.
But Pat Riley, he's not afraid to make those bold moves. I wouldn't be surprised if he explores, every avenue
Yeah.
from trades to free agency to try and retool that roster.
Speaking of bold moves, let's circle back to those potential landing spots for Butler. We talked about the Clippers and the Knicks, but are there any other teams out there that you think could be a good fit?
Yeah, there are a couple of dark horse candidates that come to mind. The Phoenix Suns, for example.
Okay.
They have a young and dynamic backcourt with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Adding Butler's veteran leadership
Right.
and his defensive prowess could make them a serious threat out west.
That's an interesting thought. I mean, Butler could be that missing piece that
Yeah.
helps him get over the hump in the playoffs.
Potentially. And don't sleep on the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oh, the Thunder.
Yeah. They've been quietly rebuilding, stockpiling draft picks, developing a young core led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
That's right. They've got a ton of young talent. They do. And they have the cap space to absorb Butler's contract.
Oh, for sure.
So could you imagine him, mentoring a young star like SGA?
Yeah.
That would be a pretty fascinating duo.
It would. It would shake things up in the West, for sure. And it kind of speaks to another layer of this whole story, right?
Oh, yeah.
The ripple effects one player's decision can have on the entire league.
It really is like dropping a stone into a pond. The
Yeah.
waves spread out and you never know where they're going to reach.
One trade can trigger a whole series of moves as teams, adjust their strategies and try to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. And it's not just about acquiring talent either, right? It's about fit chemistry, building a team that can actually compete at the highest level.
Right. You can have all the all-stars in the world, but if they don't mesh well together,
Yeah.
if they don't have that shared sense of purpose, it's not going to translate to wins.
Definitely not. And that's what makes this whole Jimmy Butler situation so compelling, you
Yeah.
know? It's not just about one player's destination.
Right.
It's about the potential chain reactions, the shifting alliances, the reshaping of the entire NBA landscape.
And it all circles back to this idea of player empowerment. Players like Butler, they have more influence than ever before.
They do.
They're not just accepting the roles that are given to them. They're actively shaping their own destinies.
And that's a good thing for the league, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
It creates more parity, more excitement, more storylines for fans to follow.
It keeps things fresh and unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of the NBA. It's a living, breathing entity that's constantly evolving.
We're all just along for the ride.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this. Think about Jimmy Butler's journey, his evolution as a player, as a person. What do you think he's looking for in his next team? What kind of environment does he need to truly flourish? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to think about those ripple effects. We've talked about the Heat, the Clippers, the Knicks, but this could impact so many other teams.
Oh, absolutely. It's like you said before, that stone in the pond, The waves just keep spreading out and you never know where they're going to reach.
Exactly. Like, let's say, just for the sake of argument, the Clippers do land Butler.
Right.
Suddenly, the whole balance of power in the West shifts dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
Teams like the Lakers, the Warriors, the Nuggets,
Yeah.
they all have to adjust their strategies.
For sure. And that's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Does this spark a whole trade frenzy? Do other teams start to panic, make some impulsive moves, or do they just sit tight and trust their existing roster?
It's like this high-stakes game of strategy,
It is.
Every general manager trying to anticipate the next move, that next domino to fall.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, acquiring talent either. It's about fit chemistry, building a team that can actually compete for a championship.
Right. You can have all the all-stars in the world, but if they don't mesh well together, if they don't have that shared sense of purpose, it's not going to translate to wins.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole, Jimmy Butler saga so compelling. It's not just about one player's destination. It's about the potential chain reactions, the shifting alliances, the reshaping of the entire NBA landscape.
And it all circles back to that idea we talked about before, player empowerment.
Yeah.
Players like Butler, they have more influence now than or before.
They do.
They're not just accepting the roles that are given to them. They're actively shaping their own destinies.
And I think that's a good thing for the league,
I agree.
Creates more parity, more excitement, more storylines for fans to follow.
It keeps things fresh, unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen next.
Exactly. That's the beauty of the NBA, It's this living, breathing entity that's constantly evolving.
We're all just along for the ride.
That's right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Think about the bigger picture here, beyond the trades, beyond the individual players. What does this whole Jimmy Butler saga tell us about the state of the NBA?
I think it tells us that the league is in constant flux, this dynamic dance between players and teams, ambition and opportunity.
It tells us that the pursuit of championships is more intense than ever, and players are willing to make these bold moves to achieve their goals.
And it tells us that the future of the NBA is bright, filled with exciting possibilities and unexpected twists and turns.
And we can't wait to see what happens next. So keep those basketball conversations going and join us next time for another deep dive into the world of the NBA. Thanks for listening.